We appreciate this opportunity to just come together. I spent a little time discussing some questions and some things about relationships, just a conversation that will continue throughout this week. So be with us is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, so we do have some very specific, good, interesting questions here, which hopefully are going to spark some discussion. So if there are some other ones that maybe come from the floor that these do open up to, then that would be perfectly fine as well. Just so you guys do, get a heads up. I'm of course going to give you what my understanding is, and of course from what my understanding of Scripture, reading that, life experience, all that kind of stuff put together is. Now I know not all of us may have the same understanding, belief in, let's say, the Bible being the unequivocal word of God. But I do say this to some individuals who are kind of in that little range. There are some very key principles that I really don't think you can argue with. So, I mean, anybody, whether you're a Christian or not, you wouldn't want your spouse to run around sleeping with 3 or 4 different people, right? Let's hope not. It's not fun. You wouldn't. So it's a good principle the Bible kind of talks about. So I don't have to always believe in the Bible to know that the principles that it's talking about are true. So I actually think our talk, regardless of what walk of faith that you're from or how you're even viewing the Scriptures, is really going to be apropos. So let's go ahead and just dive right into some of the questions that you all came up with, that you wrote down, that are near and dear to your heart. So these are not in any particular order here. I'm just grabbing the ones that we had, and we have a couple more that will wait for the weeks to go. And of course, if there's a follow-up to that and you guys want to shout out some, just put up your hand. I can call upon you and you can say something about that. So how do you go about telling someone that they should not get married because they show signs of incompatibility and maturity if they have already started counseling? So it sounds like somebody saying, hey, look, I got a buddy or a friend, or maybe, you know how some people always say, my friend, and it's really you, is dealing with some issues of incompatibility. And there's 2 things that are coming up. How do I tell a friend if they're already in counseling? So let me put my plug in first to this idea of counseling. At my church, I tell my members all the time, I really don't like doing premarital counseling. I like to do pre-engagement counseling. Here's the reason why. What a lot of us like to do is after we become engaged, you use the engagement period as a way to still figure out if the person's right for you. That's what we end up doing. And then what you do is you get this ring on your finger, you have a date set, and then you want to ask me as a pastor to counsel you so you can feel better about your bad decision, right? That's kind of how it goes. Like, okay, let's hurry up. We got to get this counseling because that's magically going to make everything work. Well, here's the thing in my philosophy on that, and I promise you, I've married, ever since I've started doing this way, not any of the couples that I've married have actually gotten divorced, because here's how we do this. Here's a principle. If you ask someone to marry you, you should be ready to go to the justice of the peace that day. I don't know, do they call that out here? I'm sorry. Down to court or whatever it is, where you don't have to do it. Usually the engagement period is only for one of 2 things. Number 1, to plan your wedding. Number 2, to get your house in order. And that simply means, okay, my lease needs to run out, all that kind of stuff. We want to invite people over. But you should not ask someone to marry you unless you know for sure y'all ready to get married right then and there. So the reason I do pre-engagement counseling is because before you ask that question, I want you both to be sure that you are compatible. Now here's what I do at the end of my sessions. We have about 6 to 8 sessions. Here's what we do. It's what is called D-Day. It's been the rumor in my church about, did you guys make it past Pastor Kelly's D-Day? And what that is, at the end in the last session, I tell the couple whether or not I would feel comfortable if they were asking me to do their wedding, if I would feel comfortable doing it. And now, I tell them I'm not God. You all make your own decision. Y'all grown folk. But I'm going to let you know that based on what I've seen and what I've experienced, this right here doesn't look like it's going to work right now. Did you hear the key word? Right now. Maybe you guys need about 6, 7 more months getting to know one another, working together, all that stuff to get it out. Now, do you know how hard it is to do that with a couple that's got invitations already passed out? They're like, oh, no, I can't do that because we got so-and-so and Aunt Pookie's coming and JoJo's coming from Africa and they already got their ticket. So although you're horrible for me, we're still going to go through it because their ticket's already purchased. So, yeah, so here's the thing when you say, how do you tell someone? You tell them because you're going to stop them possibly from making the worst decision of their life. And you need to be able to get, now if you're just a hater, that's a completely different subject. If you're just like, oh, you're marrying the person I wish I was marrying, that's completely off. But here's the best way I think to approach that. Bring up things to them in a specific way that would reveal the things you have observed in their experience. So for example, you know what? Before you started dating that person, you used to be very outgoing. Now you're very withdrawn. Bring that to their attention. Before you used to be with that person, you always used to be happy. Now you seem to be a little down on yourself and sad. Bring those kinds of things up, and then you have to allow them to make the best decision. Now, if they go to a counselor who's worth their salt and that's actually good at what they do, they'll pick that up right away. So if they're already in counseling, then they should be pretty good. If they're with a bad counselor, then they're going to be in some issues. But if you truly call them your friend, you have to say something. You have to say something. Let me tell you what I love about my boy. And we actually became best friends later. But we had known each other for about a month and a half at seminary. And I told him I was going to get married. And he asked me straight a question. He's like, dude, do you really know what you're about to do? Do you know her well enough? I mean, he was reading me right. And I'm sitting here looking at this guy like, man, you don't even know me. How are you going to ask me that? But you know what it caused me to do? I went back and started thinking. So I think the best way to say it is just to say it. Just don't be a hater when you say it. So, next question. What are the best ways for a dating couple to spend time together productively? I don't know what you mean by productively. There's a lot of ways I could, interpret that. But I'm thinking you're probably saying, what's the best way that we can spend some time and build our relationship? Well, the best way I think you can do that is activities that cause you to interact with one another. So movies, those suck as dates. Those are horrible dates because you're sitting there watching the movie and eventually the movie will probably end up watching you. Somebody caught that. So I think walks are great. I think, reading books together is great because then afterwards you can talk about it. I think obviously anything that's going to involve some kind of communication is great. Dinner is going to be great. I think serving together is great. Going to a place that maybe you're serving the homeless in your community. Maybe you guys are tutoring together. Anything that causes you to do something that's going to let you see each other interact with one another and other people, I think is absolutely incredible and amazing. Going to a sporting event together where you can laugh and joke, have a good time. Seeing how they interact in different environments is very, very important. When you have somebody who only wants to be in one environment, I would be very nervous about that. You want to see how they are around their friends, their family. So I'm one who's very different. Some of us wait too long to bring people around our family. I think that's one of the worst things you can do. Because what I want to do is right away, if I'm going out with you a couple times, I want you to come over to the house. I want to see how you interact with my folks. I want to see what you're like with my cousins. I want to see what you're like with other adults. I want to see what you're like with people who are a little different. If your family's crazy, you want to see, how do you get along with my crazy family? What does that look like to you? But here's the thing again with dating. You need to say, I'm ready to settle down, be married. Dating is something that is for mature adults. Other than that, you need to have some good friends that you hang out with and spend time with. Because to me, dating is not a casual thing. And that's why we talk about this idea. When I talked about dating, we weren't talking about, just kind of hanging out and having a good time. We were talking about, no, you making an opportunity to practice being with the right one. That's exactly what that is. And if your mind isn't in a mature state where you're like, no, I'm ready to kind of settle in. If you're still kind of trying to figure out what you want to do with life and you're not really sure, you should not be spending time dating. What you should be spending time doing is hanging out, getting to know friends, being really cool. But that whole dating kind of scenario, no, that's for mature adults who are ready to settle down. Now, I know that just shot half of your dreams right out the window, but it's real talk, because if you're not ready for that, dating turns into something else. And that something else is the stuff that messes us all up. So the second question they ask, which is the one I get with women all the time, and I know this is a girl who's writing this because of the writing and part of the way the question is phrased, but how do I get guys to approach me? Now, ladies, I'm going to tell you something. And some of the old school people are not gonna like this. I know you're not gonna like this. But I gotta tell you, this is not 1965, where the ladies just kind of sit and they kind of wait, and then the guy comes and approaches you. It just does not happen that way in 2014 anymore. Now, there is absolutely nothing wrong with you approaching a guy. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, there is something wrong with you approaching someone and being desperate and clamoring all over them and being all like that. There's something wrong. But there's nothing wrong with you approaching someone and saying, hey, how you doing? My name is so-and-so. There is nothing, that doesn't make him less of a man. It doesn't make him anything. We just live in a different day and age. When I started coming up, girls would approach me and give me their phone number. That's the way it would go. It was a new thing. It was like, oh, okay. That's the way it is now. And so there's nothing wrong with that. So you can try and keep it old school, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong. You might be old school by yourself for a little bit, because guys are a little different now. The roles have kind of changed. Are ladies a little more aggressive than they used to be? Yeah, absolutely they are. The pictures that they send and post on Instagram, that's aggressive. They didn't do that old school. Everything was like covered up. Now it's low and high. That's how it goes. So different things. So I wouldn't always wait for a guy to approach you. I just wouldn't always do that. There are so many ways, especially if you're a part of a church, where you can approach a guy. There are so many different ways you can do that. And there's some neat ways you can do that. Say, hey, there's a choir. I heard you kind of humming in the hymn. Why don't you, come and why don't we, go join the choir together? Hey, you want to be a part of the praise team? Hey, you want to come to AY? Hey, you want to come to this thing that we're doing? I mean, there's so many ways that you can introduce yourself to a young man without it seeming like you're desperate for a relationship. So I just don't buy into that whole thing, well, if you're a real man, you'll come talk to me. I mean, I think that's different now, and I think there's nothing wrong with two people engaging one another. Because what happens nowadays, and I forget, there's a couple in my church, they walked around each other for a year and a half. Because the guy was too shy, and the girl wasn't really shy, but she was sitting there waiting for him to say something. And it's eventually come on, you guys obviously like each other because you always are hanging around each other. Somebody come talk. She eventually did. They're now together, and they have a wonderful, awesome relationship. This is an easy one. If everyone at school is dating, should you? No. Yeah, no, not at all. Yeah. Because most people are probably having sex too. It doesn't mean you should with that either. How important is attraction physically? Can you be attracted to a personality and not looks and it still work? Probably not. Probably not. Let's not kid ourselves. Physical attraction is extremely important. It's extremely important. It's not the core of your relationship, but physical attraction is important. And here's what I suggest to everybody. You need to be with someone who's attractive to you. Not attractive to your friends, not attractive to your mom, but that they are attractive to you. All right? So who cares if all your friends think they're ugly, but you think they are just the dime, the bomb.com, whatever it is, if you're just like, wow, they are just amazing. Everybody else might look at you and be like, okay. But as long as you're good, that's what's exciting. Because physical attraction is very important in a relationship. Because I'm going to tell you something else that's important in a relationship, in particular a marriage. Sexual attraction. It absolutely is. It absolutely is. And especially, I don't like to say this whole thing about guys are more visual than girls, because I've seen what ladies do when they see LL Cool J and his abs. Come on, y'all. You see some oiled up abs and all that kind of stuff. You guys don't be like, oh, that personality is so amazing. No, you're just like, all these you see it. You love it. And that's fine, because we were fearfully and wonderfully made, weren't we? We were made, we're attractive, and attractiveness is subject. So you have to be with someone that you find physically attractive. You have to do that. It's unfair for you to say, I love your personality, because what ends up happening is you'll be drawn to other people. Now, the personality is what is going to keep other parts of the relationship going, which are very important. Your communication, your having fun, you're getting along, all those things. So you have to have an attraction to their personality and be compatible there. But there's another aspect to the relationship, which is called sex, which, yes, has to do with some physical components. It does. And you need to be physically attractive to one another, and that enhances the experience. Because I'm gonna tell you a lot of times what I'm dealing with, I'm not trying to scare you guys, but a lot of married couples don't have sex as much as you think. They don't. I deal with couples all the time, they're married and they haven't had sex in 4 and 5 years and live in the same house. And let me tell you some of the reasons why that doesn't happen. Because one spouse is not comfortable with their own personal appearance. So I know I got another couple that I'm working with right now where the husband doesn't want the wife to see him naked. That's crazy, right? But guess what? The reason he doesn't want that is because she's made it clear, I'm not really that physically attracted to what you look like. So how do you think he feels now? He wants the lights off every single time, all that kind of stuff. So physical attraction is important. Now let me tell you something else for the married couples, and something you get this. And here's what we do. I don't know what it's like in the UK culture and European culture, but in American culture, it is this way. But if you notice, Middle Eastern, when the ladies go outside, what are they? Covered up, right? Completely covered up. They got the stuff covered up. When they get home, that's when they take off all that stuff, and their makeup and all that stuff is well done. So they're just looking amazing at home. Now, in American culture, I know it's like in UK, when we go out the house, we do it all up, makeup on, all that kind of stuff. You get home, you take out your weave, you take off your makeup, and you just like put rollers in that thing, and it's like you ready to get busy, and it's like, whoa, wait a second. So we flip it. We flip it. But the whole point is that attraction is important. Here's what I tell couples. I had a couple that came in my office, and she was going in on her husband like, man, when we were dating, you would bring me flowers. You were so romantic. You were all this way. And then we got married, and that stuff just went out the window. And I was like, bro, man, she's going in on you, man. I said, what do you have to say? He said, Pastor, she's right. When we were dating, I used to do all those kinds of things. And you know what, Pastor? When we were dating, she used to be in the gym. See, y'all don't like that? Y'all don't like that. But it goes both ways. So here's what I tell couples. Look the best you can, as long as you can, as often as you can. That's what you got to do. Look as good as you can for other people. There is nothing like a spouse being able to stand up to somebody who's trying to kick game to them, look at them, and say something very clearly. You know what? Not only does my man or my woman take good care of me at home, but they look good too. I mean, you can't beat that. Then the devil has very few avenues to open up and get inside of your life. And so here's where that starts, this idea of doing your best to look the best you can. I'm telling you, they had a picture of Christy Brinkley. She's an American model. I'm not sure if you all have heard of her. 60 years old, and she looks better than some 30-year-olds. Jennifer Lopez right now, killing the game. No, here's the thing. She's 44. Now, of course, everyone says Hollywood, they take all these surgeries. But let me tell you some of the things that Jennifer Lopez says. She says, I get 10 hours of sleep at night. I don't party. I don't drink. I hit the gym. I take care of myself. And that's how she's able to do it. And you know what? If people in the world would do that, how much more so should we? To take care of ourselves just because our bodies are the temple, but also because, hey, you know what? I want to be attracted to someone all the time. I want that to happen, and that is absolutely possible. Now, again, if you get sick, you have some disease, certain things start to, grow in different places because you can't get to the gym. That's a completely different story. But don't sit here and be lazy and just let yourself go and then get mad that your spouse is looking at other people. No, I'm not saying that's right either, but help them out. Help them out. Give them something nice to look at. Yeah, people hate that part. They hate that part. But I'm telling you, it's not the basis for getting married, but it is a part of it. It is a part of it. And you can just stay the best you can as long as you can, as often as you can. This morning you said that your present will become your past, and your past will become or will eventually appear on your future. Well, my question is, how can I let go what is in my past? I mean, there are some stuff that I am not proud of, and I really regret till the point that I won't want to do that again, but in the future with my partner, that will still be there. Well, again, one of the things that we said, and this is just life and it stinks, there's some decisions you made that have eternal consequences here on this earth. They just do. There's some things that you have done before that are just going to follow you wherever you go. I mean, it's just the nature of life. That's one of the things that happens. I'll tell this story now, even though I usually use it in this one sermon that we're going to talk about. But I was 15 years old and got involved with a young lady, and you know, I was like in seventh, eighth, or ninth grade, something like that. Yeah, I was in ninth grade, and we were, you know, dating, whatever you want to call that. You know, my boy had to drive us around everywhere. But we fooled around, did a lot of things, did everything but sex. And I'm 15 years old. It's like, okay, whatever. You know, you grow up, you get out of that. You know, I become a pastor, following God, all that kind of stuff. This was in California. I'm pastoring in Colorado Springs. Moved from Colorado Springs to Nebraska. I mean, I'm now in my 30s, and then I finally get invited back at 29 years old to Mount Rubidoux, just about to go 30. I've been out of California for 15 years. My first Sabbath at my church, guess who's there? That young lady, sitting behind my wife. Yeah. Making all kinds of comments to her friends next to her about the guy who's standing there in the pulpit. And just the way she looks at me is uncomfortable. Because she looks at me like, I've seen you naked, Pastor. And guess what? She has. She absolutely has. She's seen everything my wife has seen. She's seen me naked. I mean, it's just the way it is. And that happened 15 years ago. And I'm forgiven by that. But guess what I have to deal with now on Sabbath mornings? I shared this story, you know, with my congregation. It's so funny. Everyone's trying to figure out who it is. You know, which one is it? Which one is it? You know, but do you think I like having to deal with that? No, I don't like having to deal with that at all. I don't like having to look at her and then have different images pop in my mind while I'm sitting there trying, you know, singing about Jesus and all that different kind of stuff. It's uncomfortable. It's weird. But guess what? That's a consequence of a decision that I made. That's a consequence of my present at 15 eventually became my past, and then when I turned 30, it's in my future now. And it's there. And as much as I've dealt with it, as much as I've been forgiven for it, as much as I'm not repeating that same mistake, it still comes back to get me. It does. And there's gonna be stuff in your life that no matter what, it's gonna come back to get you. It just is. And that's a consequence of life. Now, God might shield you from something like that. Let's say she died or something like that. Well, I don't have to deal with that no more. But I mean, other than that, I'm going to. And here's the thing. The Adventist church is small. It's big, but small. So if you fool around with somebody in a certain way and they're Adventist, trust me, you're going to run into them again. Someday along the line, you are going to. And it's going to be weird. I'm telling you, it's going to be really weird. So when you say kind of get over it, here's where I've gotten over it. I've gotten over it from the sense that when I see her, I don't want to go be with her again. When I see her, I don't have the feelings of guilt anymore. I don't have the feelings of shame. So I've dealt with my past in that way. But I can't escape it. I can't. It's just there in my face. And this is why I tell all of you, you've got to watch what decisions you make today. You've got to watch that. And it doesn't just have to be a sexual one. It could be a financial one. It could be an emotional one. It could be a physical one. I mean, that thing is going to come back to get you. There were some guys who had, or some gals, I think, that wanted to have some kind of surgery and stuff like that to enhance their physical appearance in different places, and they didn't go to the best doctor, and it hampered them in such a way where now they can't have kids. It's a decision they made 10 years ago when they weren't thinking about having kids. Now they're married, they want to have kids, and they found out they can't, and that surgery is the reason why. So here's what we've got to understand, and we're not trying to be like breaking the fun and all that, but the stuff you do now affects what you do tomorrow. I mean, it's just the bottom line. Ellen White says this amazing thing. She says one of the most powerful things we can teach our children is how to reason from the standpoint of cause to effect. And that's what you and I have to be able to do with our dating lives, with every part of our life, is to say, okay, if I do this now, what cause and effect will it have later? And if you can live with that, then do it. I tell people all the time, do it. Just do it. If you want to sleep around and do all that, just do it. Just know that there's a consequence that's going to come from that. And if you can live with it, by all means, by all means. So I know that sounds bad, because it is. It stinks, but that's just the way life goes. And some of you know that because you're dealing with some of your past now. Some stuff, I mean, and it just messes with you. It always messes with you. And that's something that you're just never really, unfortunately, going to be able to escape in a worldly sense. Now, it's erased from heaven's books, but we ain't God. And a lot of us never forget, and neither do we usually. How do you know when the past has really been dealt with? For me, I would say you know when the past has really been dealt with when it doesn't have the same kind of emotional or physical or spiritual effect on you that it did at one time. So let's just use a past relationship. You say you're over that person, right? That's what you say. You tell everybody, I'm over that person. And then when you see them with somebody else, you always got to say something to them, and you always got a little attitude about them. What does that tell me? Nah, you ain't over them, because they still are affecting you in some way. Never forget, there's this person who's about to get married, and she wanted to settle something with her ex-boyfriend. Like, are you crazy? Why do you even feel the need to have to do that? Like, well, that's just not right what he's doing. Well, why isn't it right? Because that this doesn't make me feel. Why are you worried about how he makes you feel? You about to get married, boo. You're not done with that. You're not done with that. So you know that you're not done with your past if you still feel some effects from it. So if hearing their name still makes you feel, ugh, if hearing about the situation still brings the guilt and shame, then you know you haven't effectively dealt with your past. Same principle actually for forgiveness. Forgiveness doesn't mean that I forget. I hate it when people say forgive and forget. You ain't going to forget. There's no way you're going to forget. And please don't think, like sometimes we like to say, well, God forgets. No, he doesn't. He just chooses not to hold it against you. It's almost like we play this game even with God. Like we sin one time, right? And then all of a sudden we ask for forgiveness, and so God simply forgets it. And so we come to God and we say, now God, I have only done this for the first time, right? And God's like, yeah, because I totally forgot what you did yesterday. No, that's not how it works. What God does, though, is he says, I forgive you. I just don't hold against you what it is that you've done. And so that's the same thing, I think, with let go of your past. You're saying, this stuff has happened in my past, but the emotions that I had towards it, the feelings that I have towards it, I kind of let that thing go. I let it go. So if stuff is still bothering you actively, then you probably haven't let that go. Repeat question here. So we kind of already dealt with that. A lot of you seem to be worried about some past stuff. Here we go. How would you know the right person has come into your life, even though you said no to this person, but they are saying that this is from God, but the feeling isn't the same from your end? That is awesome. I think that's classic. I love it when people do that. The God told me I'm supposed to be with you. That's ridiculous, let me tell you. That's the most ridiculous, absurd thing ever. I'll tell you, if that person is telling you that, there's something wrong with them. I know that's harsh, but there is. Because God's not going to tell somebody about your life before he tells you. That's a lot of Old Testament thinking, which is not necessarily wrong, but I want you to notice what used to happen in the Old Testament. This is Bible for a moment. When God had a message for the people, who would he use to give the message? The prophets. That's what he'd do. He'd send the prophets. That was until who came? Jesus Christ came. And then even when Jesus leaves, he has to leave, so who can come? The Holy Spirit. Because he says what the Holy Spirit's job is going to be able to do is be able to talk to you all about leading you into all the right things and the things of God and godliness and all that kind of stuff. As a matter of fact, Hebrews even says that in the last days spoke to us through the prophets, but in these last days has spoken to us through his son. So the thing is, there are going to be very, 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 very few times where God is going to tell someone to tell you something he hasn't already told you. Even when I preach, do you think people usually come to me and say, oh my goodness, God is just telling me that? No, you know what usually people say? Man, Pastor, God was already trying to tell me something and you just confirmed it. That's what God does. He uses his Spirit to speak to us, to lead us, and usually other people confirm it. Other people aren't the Holy Spirit in that sense, in something so personal as to say, God told me I'm supposed to be your spouse. And there's absolutely nothing ungodly about you for saying, well, I'm going to wait till he tells me the same thing. There's nothing ungodly about that. I hate that. You have no idea how many people have pulled that thing and messed people up spiritually because they said, and they've gone to a point they say, you're disobeying God if you're not with me. You're disobeying God. You're not going to be blessed. And so they come to me, Pastor, is my life messed up? I said, yeah, because you listened to a fool, not because you did what God said. So no, God's going to tell you. And remember what I said earlier this morning, I don't believe that God is sitting here leading you like a magnet saying, that one. I don't think God does that. I think God knows what you like. I think God knows your personality. I think he knows the kind of person that turns you on and all that different kind of stuff. And I think there's more than one of them. One of them has this personality, the other one has that personality. And I think God presents to you options. And God says, hey, you know what? We can work with both of these. But again, what I do believe God does do is say, you know what? But that one you need to leave alone. That one you need to leave alone. You talk about dating. When does courtship come in the equation? Or is that the word you use referring to courtship? It absolutely is. Courtship scares, I don't consider myself to only preaching to Christians. And so I use the word dating because courtship in a lot of different people's mind takes on a completely different kind of connotation. And so for me, dating and courtship is synonymous, hence the reason I say you shouldn't start dating until you're ready for what? Until you're ready for marriage. So that would kind of be pretty much the same thing for me. I don't believe in casual dating or anything like that. I believe that I am going to be dating you because I believe that after being friends with you for some time, I see that there's some potential here for something deeper. And I want to get to know you on a deeper level. And after I get to know you on a deeper level, I might discover that we're not meant to be with one another, but I'm not going to be broken because my heart still would have been guarded and I wouldn't have allowed you to do certain things to me and me certain things to you that you'll be so scarred that when we decide to go our separate ways, we won't be wrecked for the next person. So that's how that experience needs to go. So dating and courtship are synonymous for me. Should you let your partner know about your struggle with a certain addiction or just do the recovery on your own and not tell them? Oh, no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. If you're dating somebody and you've got some kind of addiction, they need to know. As a matter of fact, if you guys are even closer to getting married, I think you should really spend some time sharing with individuals the addictions that maybe run in your family. Exodus 20 tells us something that a lot of times we forget, that God says that I will pass down from one generation to the next the sins of each generation of them that hate me. I mean, that's very clear. I believe very much so in stuff that one family struggles with usually finds its way into your life some way and somehow. So what I did is when I sat down with my wife when we had, started to get a little serious before we got married, obviously, and I said, hey, I want to tell you about me and my family. I want to tell you about me. And I want to tell you about some of the things that I've got some serious issues with. And so we started to break that down. I also told her very clearly, I said, I want to let you know that everybody except one uncle in my family has been divorced. So I said, I want to let you know very clearly that when we start going through some issues, where do you think I'm going to lean towards? Divorce, because guess what? That's what I've seen. That's what I've known. Those are some of the things that I deal with. Those are some of the things that Michael Kelly brings to the table. And what she was able to then do is like, oh, okay, now she can make a decision. You know what? I don't want that. I don't want that. Now, would that have been hurtful for me? Absolutely. But she could say, you know what? At least he let me know ahead of time what I don't want to deal with. Because you know what? Some of those things she has to deal with right now. She has to deal with right now. Because that's a part of my makeup. That's a part of the way I was raised. It's something that, you still work through some stuff and you continually work through it. But that's a part of what I experienced. And so if you're struggling with some kind of addiction, let's use a simple one. Pornography. You better tell your spouse or the person that you're planning on dating or that you're dating and being your spouse. You need to tell them because you need to let them know that, hey, if we get married, please don't think that all of a sudden that's going to go away. Because marriage does not cure pornography. Did y'all know that? It doesn't. It's a completely different kind of thing. Completely different kind of thing. And so you have to let the person know. It is so unfair for them to be surprised by your addiction. That is absolutely unfair. And that's why if you ever went to counseling with me, we lay some stuff all out on the table. So that when you go into the marriage, you'll be like, you know what? I know that they struggle with that. I know that they struggle with lust. They do. They struggle with lust. And we're going to work through that together. We're going to work through that together. Yep. You know what? Yep. Drugs. Yep. They're having some issues with drugs. I know that. Now, I might not get married to them until they figure that out. I suggest that. But even if they have it figured out, guess what you're always going to have to deal with? The possibility that that person could fall back into that particular addiction. Same thing. If you used to be an individual who struggled with same-sex stuff, you better tell that person that you're about to get serious with. Let them know. So you know what? I got to tell you, there's a point in my experience in life where I was attracted to the same sex, and I got to let you know that because it's not just all of a sudden going to go away. And that's why I'll tell you one of the best things I want to ask you guys to do. I want you to actually do this. This is your homework assignment. I want you to do this. I'll never forget when I was struggling with promiscuity in my sexuality. I was sitting there, I was like, dude, what is going on with this? I was like, what is up with that? Now, my parents are divorced. So I said, I wasn't abused. No, I said, where is this coming from? So I picked up the phone, and I called my parents on three-way. And I said, hey, Mom, Dad. I said, I've been struggling with this thing, and I need to know which one of y'all was struggling with it too. Because this came from somewhere. And there was like silence on the phones, just like there is right now. And then finally, one of my parents spoke up, and they're like, you know what? I had the same thing when I was growing up. And it was like, makes sense. And I knew how to deal with it completely in a different way. You all need to do that. And if there are any parents who are sitting here, you need to be bold enough to tell your kids what you struggled with. To be like, yep, this is what I'm going, this is what I went through. Because some of us act like we didn't go through anything. Like, oh no, I was just in the church and I was just all in God and, no, you weren't. It's just true. That's just not the case. And it kind of, what it did for me is it put perspective into something that I was struggling with. It put perspective into that. So do that. Do that. Be very, very open with your children because it gets passed down. It gets passed down. Here's this last one. I'm sorry, I cannot read this writing. So I'm going to put that one in. That's blank. We have this one. What is wrong with oral sex? Nothing. No one can show me any text in the Bible that speaks to that at all. There's not. Some people have taken some things out of context and they say, don't do certain things on the Sabbath, like sex on the Sabbath. Again, because you need to refrain from your own pleasure. I remind people all the time I take pleasure in preaching. Should I not do that? I tell people, how is it that something that is God ordained should not be done on God's ordained day? The marriage bed, according to the book of Hebrews, is undefiled. Undefiled. That's what the Bible says. It is undefiled. What is that idea when you get down to the original understanding of that word undefiled? It gives this connotation that the marriage bed is actually very holy. And the act of sex is very sacred and all of the things surrounding sex. And the thing that makes it sacred is because it symbolizes two individuals coming together in what should be the most unselfish act to man. Where my goal as a spouse is to please you, your goal as a spouse is to please me. And we come together unselfishly into a bedroom, and we are doing things that are bringing the other person pleasure. And let's make no mistake about it. God could have made procreation where I touch your nose and you pull my ear and then you get pregnant. He could have done that, right? Or he could have done it this way. The only time sex is pleasurable is when a baby's going to come. But for some reason, even when people don't get pregnant, sex still feels good, right? Right? Some of you are like, I should know, but yes. Right? Yeah, right. But so the thing is that we've kind of been taught is that there are certain things that are wrong because, and let me use this as an example. I'll never forget what somebody said. They said, well, you know what? Oral sex is wrong because it's in pornography. Well, kissing's in pornography. The act of sex is in pornography. Does that make it wrong? No, but it's in the wrong context. It's in the wrong context. So, back to that word undefiled. Undefiled also brings the understanding that if you and your spouse both agree and are both comfortable, then it's something that is acceptable for you. It's not defiling the other. Because your spouse says, hey, I'm all right with this. Your spouse says, hey, I'm okay with that. And you come together. There are two things the Bible does say that even if two people agree upon should not be done. One is going to be sodomy, that has anything that has to do with your anus. And number two, that has to do with bringing someone or something extra into the marriage bed. So you're not going to bring extra videos into your marriage bed. You're not going to bring a third party into your marriage bed. Those are the two things that the Bible talks about. Outside of that, the Bible wants you to be happily sexually in your marriage. Now, there's a lot of different people who have different views on that, and here's the thing. That's your view, and that's okay. So don't do it in your bedroom. But it's wrong for you to try and impose that on somebody else's bedroom. So if you are uncomfortable with oral sex, that is totally fine. That is absolutely fine. Here's the thing I would ask you to do. In your premarital counseling, make sure your partner knows that. In my pre-engagement counseling, we have one full section. And guess what we talk about? Not just sex. I have them sit down there with one another and I say, here's what I need you to do. I say, I need you both to write down what you both are comfortable with and uncomfortable with right now. Well, I don't want to do that. No, but Pastor, it's so weird. Write it down, please. And here's what happens. I'm going to tell you what happens. And I'm telling you, it has saved some couples misery. And I'll tell you why. They both write down. And I'll never forget this one couple is crazy. Everything the young lady was comfortable with, her future husband was uncomfortable with. Now, can you imagine what that would have been like on the marriage night? And they're coming together in holy matrimony, and then all of a sudden, he's like, hey, she's like, hey, you ready? And he's like, no, I can't do that. And that's fine, but let's know that ahead of time. And here's the thing that God wants you both to be on the same page sexually. On the same page sexually. So, what is wrong with oral sex? There isn't. There isn't. Is there a question? Yeah. Yeah, so I remember he said a couple pastors have said to him that it's unclean and that it's and that's filthy. And that's filthy. Again, there's not anything filthy about a husband and wife pleasing one another. Now again, if I'm pleasing you in a way that's causing you physical harm, hurting you, bringing somebody else in, or that is eroding the connection and relationship we have, absolutely. But again, the marriage bed, again, is undefiled. And the defiling act is not the act of two individuals kissing or kissing in certain places. The Bible does not speak to that. It does not speak specifically at all to that. As a matter of fact, even somebody tried to use this as an example. I don't know if you guys know the story of Onan. when he spilled his seed on the ground. And people say, oh, yep, you know what that means? That means that the only time, any time that the semen gets anywhere, it's got sick. No condoms, no nothing, none of that kind of stuff. It's like, whoa, the context was very clear. What did God tell him to do? Get her pregnant. What did he not do intentionally? Get her pregnant. So the issue was not the fact that his seed was not there because God had a problem with that within itself, but he was disobeying a direct command. Because some people use that text to say, well, you should never use a contraceptive. You should never do anything like that. No, that's not at all. Not at all. Yeah.
When you're referring to oral sex, are you specifically talking about oral sex within the context of marriage?
Absolutely within the context of marriage.
Right.
Anything sexually within the context of marriage.
So oral sex outside of the context of marriage is a no-no?
Yeah, we'll talk about that when I have a sermon. We're going to talk about that this week.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll talk about that this week. But yeah, so we're all talking about, because remember what I said, which bed is undefiled? The marriage bed is undefiled. Any other bed that's not a marriage bed, that's extremely defiled. That's extremely defiled. And we'll talk about that. We'll give you some Bible for that. Give you some Bible for that. Does somebody else have something? Yeah. If there's back or front, wherever it is, yeah.
Should we pray before sex?
You know, should you pray before sex? Yeah, if you want. That'd be great. It's funny you say that. You know, there was a couple that testified one time at my church. Because again, here's the thing that's funny about sex. That feels weird to say, doesn't it? Because you know what you and I have been taught? That sex is dirty. We've been taught that it's supposed to be separate from something spiritual. It's a spiritual act. It's an absolutely spiritual, holy act. Why? Because who created sex? God or the devil? God. The devil did not make that up. God made it up. So it is absolutely fine for you to pray before sex. Some people pray for, what did one couple say that they pray? They said, God, help me be able to please my wife the right way. He gets specific, God, give me stamina because I want to be able to I mean, they go in. They go in. Some people pray afterwards. God, thank you for us experiencing this pleasurable moment together. And here's why I want to challenge you. And I'm taking a little thunder away from a sermon that we're going to preach. But here's why I tell all the couples who aren't married, who want to have sex, pray before you do it. Pray before you do it. See how you feel. Say, God, I want you to please bless what we're about to do. See what happens. So try it. So, but yeah, pray before sex. Now, some people, they say, is it okay to listen to gospel during sex? Yeah, not for me. That's weird. Because I don't want to hear Kurt, but some people do. I mean, they listen to, Fred Hammond and all that kind of stuff. But again, your bed is undefiled. Your bed is undefiled. As long as you and your spouse are coming together in agreement, it really is all good. Those are all the ones I have here. I don't know if there's some others from the floor that are kind of piggybacking off of some of the stuff that we said.
Yeah, like for example, back in like the 80s, early 90s, is it not on? Yeah. Lots of like my parents, it was the culture like you finish high school, you get married, you both work, you both support each other. But I think in today's world, people like their ambition is to finish their doctorate and then get married. But by that time, they're like 30 years old. Mm-hmm. Usually, what we just said now, unattractive in their 30s. And now,
well,
what happens?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if that's my thing. Like, and then what I want to ask you, like, do you think more Adventists should get married in college and support each other, or finish everything and then look in your 30s? Because I don't think like looking for someone in your 30s is ideal.
It's ideal, yeah. Now that's a good question. It's a very good question. So here's the thought and the idea. If you can sustain each other, not just financially, but emotionally, and still grow with the strain of not being in a career, and you're mature in the point that, hey, you're at that age where you're going to change, but not that much. You have experiences in life. You know kind of what you're looking for in a person. They know what they're looking for in a person. Well, you can go ahead and get married. The thing that I have an issue with two people being in college is you got the stress of school, so the quality time is going to be a little difficult. It's really easy to get caught up with life. If you are going to have sex while you're married, I don't care how much birth control you use, there's only one thing that will make sure a baby doesn't happen, and that's abstinence. And I would say you don't do that when you're married. So there's a possibility that you can be in college, a baby gets inserted into the situation while you're trying to finish school, and inevitably, guess what somebody's going to end up doing? They're going to stop going to school. And so there's a lot of different variables within there. In your parents' day and my parents' day, I think life was a lot simpler. Things were not as complicated as they are now. You didn't need master's degrees to get jobs. There were a lot more blue-collar jobs that you can get that were very, very good for you. Nowadays, man, it's difficult, to be able to find work, sustain, and take care of a family. People aren't attractive in their 30s if they just let themselves go. And that's why I think one of the most important things you can do is keep yourself up. Get the right amount of sleep, eat the right foods, exercise, do all those things that we know that we should do, and I think we'll be okay. People nowadays, one of the issues with Social Security, I think it's different over here than it is, of course, in America, but we've got a huge issue with Social Security. One of the reasons why is, guess what? People aren't dying. They're actually living longer because they're taking care of themselves. They're doing all those kinds of things. So getting married at 28, 29 isn't like a death sentence anymore. It's just usually people want to be set in their careers, because when you get married, again, even what Paul says, guess what your focus is when you get married? It needs to be your marriage. So you can do it, but just know that it's going to be a little different. It's going to be a little different. What was cool for me is when I got married, although I still think it was way too young, I was just about to start my career. So I spent about a year and a half in seminary, and she was already in her career, so we were able to, boom, kind of hit the ground running. But I can tell you, if I was in college, nah, that just wouldn't have worked, especially, of course, at my age. But it might work for you. It might work for you, but just be aware that if you're in school and you're married, you're going to have this competition. You're going to have a competition, and something is going to suffer at some point. There's actually a good book by Andy Stanley. It's called Choosing to Cheat. And it talks about this idea that in life we always cheat something. And we cheat our job for our families, and sometimes we cheat our families for our job. So you've got to weigh that balance out where you are in your stage of life, what it is you're going to cheat. Don't know if we had any other questions. The time is totally yours. Yeah, I think I saw a hand right over here.
Last question.
This isn't really relationship related, but basically I was having a talk with a friend who is an SDA, and he was saying that there's nothing in the Bible that says you can't have tattoos. I gave him some tattoos. I gave him some text, your body is a temple, and the other one, don't scar your body for dead people and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And he was saying that verse was, that the verses I'm telling him are completely out of context. So I was just wondering what your take on that was.
Yeah, I agree with him on the first part of the text, which I think you're referring to in Judges, because the text is very clear: don't mark your body for the dead. Because what they were doing back during that time is when someone died or to their deity or God, they would mark their body there. So the question I have to some people is, okay, so what if I have, like I saw this one guy who had Romans 8 on this arm and then John 3:16 on the other arm. That's not marking to the dead. And someone could say, yeah, well, Jesus died, yeah, but he's alive. So that doesn't fit that context. The other text you use, I think, is the best one, which I use for everything. And that's my body is a temple of the Holy Spirit, which means my body doesn't belong to me. So here's what I tell somebody. I say, I don't allow you to walk into my house and decorate my house with anything without you first asking me for permission. So I'm going to ask you to do is before you come into my house, you're going to say, hey, Mike, I've got this great idea. I want to move your sofa here, put this new sofa there. Is that okay with you? And then if I say yeah, then I think you have complete permission to do that. So here's what I tell people, whether it comes to piercing your ear, whether it comes to tattooing your body, whatever it is, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go to the owner of the house, God, and say, hey, God, I think I've got some really cool decorations for your house. I think this is going to really look neat. It's going to really look cool. Some of them I can take out in the middle of the night. Others of them are going to stay on me permanently. I want to know, are you okay with that? And if God tells you, Yes. Not your friends or whatever, well, okay. But if he tells you no, then leave it alone. But just know that every act that we do, God is going to hold us accountable for. So that's the thing I tell people all the time. So your body's the temple. Anything you do to the temple, you need to check with the owner. Stuff you put in it, check with the owner. Stuff you put on it, check with the owner. Stuff you tat it with, check with the owner. And then remember that whatever you ink it with, tat it with, or put in it should represent the one who owns it. So I'm not going to let you put something in my house that doesn't reflect who I am. So I tell some people who are hell-bent on getting tattoos, if you got to get one, then you better make sure it reflects the owner of your temple. And then guess what most of them don't do? Oh, man, I was trying to get this naked chick on my arm. Well, that doesn't reflect the owner of the temple. So I always say check with the owner, and I'm comfortable with people doing that because I think God's going to give you the answer that he needs for you to have. I think I saw two more hands over here. Maybe you just got to talk real loud. Oh, there it is.
A lot of people in the church, kind of like you were saying, are looking for the right one that's going to change them and make them the right. But there's a certain amount of the idea that maybe we need to go out and kind of not practice in dating, but getting socially aware so that when the right one comes along, we're the right sort of person for it. So I was wondering, how do you feel about like practicing going out with girls and getting comfortable with talking to them and engaging with them?
Yeah, no, that is awesome. Let me tell you the only reason we don't like we don't like that. That's a great point. There's only one reason we don't like that. Because we'll end up talking to them and then fooling around with them. That's the only reason that becomes a problem. We talk with them and it leads to something physical. Because what better way? I think I got a little too high on here. If you guys can turn down, just my mic down just a little bit. The only thing that really becomes that is not an issue is, I love that, socially getting to know how to interact with another female or another male, if you're a female of the opposite sex, in a safe setting where my heart and my physical well-being is not at risk. Learning how to communicate, how to resolve a conflict, how to deal with certain issues. I mean, that is absolutely gold. I have one of my best friends, I had a lot of female friends coming up. I had a lot of female friends coming up, and I'm just going to keep it real. Most of my female friends are universally attractive. It's just how it is. And let me tell you one of the reasons why. Not because of something necessarily within me, except for this one thing. They always tell me this. They said, Mike, you want to know why we can be super cool with you? They said, because you don't end up wanting to do stuff with us. Don't you hate that, ladies? When you're cool with a guy, and then you ask him to go out, and he always ends up catching feelings, and he always misunderstands your intentions and all that kind of stuff. So I never did that. And here's the other thing they said. They said, I learned about guys from hanging with you. But I was able to learn that without you taking advantage of it, without you trying to sneak in the back door and be like, well, hey, if you think that I'm cool, then really let me show you something. No, none of that happened. And it was a safe environment, and they've even told me to this day, they said, you know what? It actually saved me from a couple bad relationships. So I think what you're saying is right on point. I think the problem is when we cross that line. And when we cross that line, that's when it all gets messed up. And that's an emotional line, and I think also a physical line. And we'll actually talk about that tomorrow night on how we can work that more specifically. I'm not sure whoever has the mic in hands next. Here's the other one.
I'll just ask, what's your opinion about dating outside of the church? What's your opinion about dating outside the church?
Define outside of the church for me.
Not within the context of Adventism.
Okay, yeah. And I appreciate you defining it that way because I don't like the term that we use to describe other Christians as unbelievers. That's not true. You know, sometimes we say the unbelievers. No. An unbeliever is somebody who does not believe in Christ or God, period. So that's different. There's a difference between two Christians dating and a Christian and a non-Christian dating. Does everybody understand that so far? Difference between Christian dating and a non-Christian dating. I want to save a little bit of that question for tomorrow night because we'll actually address that. But here's what I'll say to start it with, and I'm not going to deal with the rest of it. I am going to deal with it tomorrow night, though. Just because someone's Adventist doesn't mean they're safe to date. That doesn't mean they're safe to date. That's a false sense of security that we give. And I just don't want to preach my sermon right now tomorrow. So we'll pick up the rest of that tomorrow. But it's a good question. It's an age-old question, but we'll talk about that real specifically. So I'm sorry about that. You just got to wait till tomorrow.
When would you say is the best time to kind of express publicly that you're interested in someone? Because I think for a lot of people that I know, they're scared to, because it's almost as if when everyone knows you're interested in someone, if it doesn't work out, you can kind of be seen as belonging to that person or kind of tainted, because obviously everyone knows that you've had an unsuccessful relationship.
Okay. Okay. We got to have a little more game than that. And here's what I mean by that. And there's nothing wrong with having game. There's nothing wrong with having game. I mean, you're supposed to have game. That's just it works. You shouldn't use game in the wrong way. You're supposed to have game. You should never publicly express that without first knowing more than likely how they feel already. So let me tell you what a lawyer is never going to do. They're never going to ask you a question they don't already know the answer to. They're never going to do that. So what I'm going to do is we're going to be friends. And we're going to spend a tremendous amount of time just being friends. And I'm going to be able to tell, without just overtly saying it, what different things that we're going to do while we're spending time together. I'm going to see how you respond to me by asking you little specific questions, whether or not you are interested in me besides being more than a friend. So I'm not just going to all of a sudden go out with you 2 times and not really have a whole lot of conversation, be like, yo, look, I am totally feeling you. And they're like, wait a second. That's weird. So what you're going to do is you're going to wait, and we're going to spend time. And can we be real? You know when somebody's feeling you. Like, you know that. Like, you know there's a look that they get in your eye when they look at you. They'll text you a little differently. They'll say things a little differently. I mean, all this kind of stuff. And so when you start to feel that, then you can start to slowly let it out. And I don't think it should just be this one big blurt out declaration. It should be a gradual thing of time. Yeah, follow up. I see what you're saying. So we're dating somebody already. When do we let everybody know? I mean, I think that's up to you and the person you're with. And here's the reason why. Because the worst thing you don't want the person to think is you're trying to hide them. You know, I mean, that's awful. Like, well, what, you're ashamed of me? You know, or like Tim said, what, you think I'm ugly because I'm 30? You know? you don't want people to see, like, wear your mask when you go out. You know? Yeah, I mean, if people view you as being tainted because you broke up, that's their problem, because they're not in your relationship. Now, if you guys are the kind of couple that argues in public and has all these trifling opening experiences, then yeah, people are going to look at you that way. But I think the moment you guys are comfortable and you guys are saying, hey, this isn't just a little casual thing, which it should never be, but hey, we're actually serious, I think it would be great to let people know. Now, do I think you need to send out cards in the mail? Hey, we're dating now? No. I think people might just see you holding hands, arms around each other, but more than likely, people probably already knew. They saw you hanging around each other more than anybody else. They caught the glances that you guys had. They caught the fact that they see you always together at these different functions. So I think you both can let it out, and who cares what people think, honestly, truly. Yeah. Yes? I know you're getting your exercise, man.
What do you think about internet dating?
Yeah. Dating or meeting somebody?
Dating.
Yeah, I don't know how you could do that. Not dating. Yeah. You mean like you're my girlfriend, I'm your boyfriend, but we've never met, but we've just met online?
Basically, I got a text to ask you that. It's not my question, so.
No, don't say that because then we're going to think it is your question. So just ask the question. No, I'm serious. So, which is fine. Yeah. No, it's fine. Okay, so here's the thing. Internet dating. We're in 2014. I think you meet people all the time in a variety of ways. What I think is a little awkward and just, I'll use the word, weird maybe, is for you to be someone's boyfriend or girlfriend and you've never met face to face. I wouldn't do that. I just would not do that. I think it's cool for two people to meet, online. You can meet online, but then eventually we're just gonna use the online as the platform by which I know you, you know me, and we exchange information. But if all I know about you are Facebook inbox posts, pictures that you put up, and conversation that's via electronic medium, no. I need to sit down with you. I need to see what your body language is like. So before I'm gonna call you my girlfriend or anything, there is no way that we can be online exclusively. I mean, that just doesn't work under any stretch of the imagination. The last couple, a couple I just married, it was so funny. They were living separately in separate states. And let me tell you, this is so simple. Now, they had met each other before. All that kind of stuff. Met each other before, talked, dated, all that kind of stuff. I was doing some pre-engagement counseling with them. So what would happen is they would show up and they would come to California and they would spend about 2 weeks together at a time. Now, what do you think they did mostly during those 2 weeks? They were just arguing. Arguing to the point where they were like, oh, that's a different sign here? I'm sorry, I didn't know what that was. Good night. See, kidding. Right. Like, oh man, he's hitting it. No, in 2 weeks. Okay. My apologies. So they were, what can I do with my hands? Nothing. They were arguing. So they're arguing all the time. And so they came in a session and they were like, you know what? This relationship just isn't working. We shouldn't be together and all this kind of stuff. And here's what I had to do. I had to remind them. I said, wait a second. Let me tell you why you guys are arguing, because guess what you guys have not done for most of your relationship? Spent time together. You don't know what it's like to be with one another. All your conversations are on the phone. They're not face to face. They're not understanding each other's habits and all that kind of stuff. So they worked through some of that stuff out and everything's okay. So you need to be in each other's presence. So I wouldn't do the online thing. I just would not do the online thing. I think I saw another hand. I have no idea what the time is, so I'm at your disposal. All right, we had two more? Yeah. Yeah, long distance, you need to be closer before you get married for a little period of time, before you get engaged, I would say. Long distance, I'm totally cool with, because I think there's an idea of you not wearing out your courtship, so that's good. Because if you're always seeing someone every single day, all the time, and then you get married, there's not this, it's nothing really new. It's like, well, I see you every day anyway, you know? So I think the idea of spending some time together and some time apart is really cool. I think that's cool. But if most of your time is apart, then you really don't know the other person, I think, the way you should. So if you are long distance, you need to make sure that before you get serious, there needs to be a portion where you aren't long distance, where we're in the same place for a decent amount of time. The other one was cross-cultural dating. There's no problem with that at all. I just think you need to know the culture, and you need to know what culture you're getting involved with and what comes with that culture. There's a lot of different nuances and things to culture that can affect the marriage. The way that you guys do Christmas, the way that you guys might do Thanksgiving, the way that you guys do family outings, and I think it's very important that you guys know the culture that you're getting involved with. So I have no problem with that as long as you both understand and respect the other's culture. Now, the only thing I'd say about culture is culture, and this is very important because this happens in our church all the time. Culture does not transcend the Bible. I want to make that very clear. Because some of us put our cultural beliefs on our spirituality. Can't do that. Just because your culture says that it's better to be quiet in church doesn't mean it's sinful to be loud. That's a culture thing. That's all that is. That's all it is culture. That's all that is culture. Just because your culture says that there's certain instruments and stuff that we don't use does not mean that the Bible says that either. And so what we have to be careful is not allow our cultural preference to transcend the scriptures. And a lot of times that's what we do. And I'll be very frank, Adventists are the kings at that. We are awesome at that. Bringing our cultural preferences into our spirituality. You can do that into your relationship, but you can't do that into your spirituality. Yeah.
Okay. Would you ever, or do you think it's acceptable to marry a big age gap like a 25-year-old and 60-year-old?
Oh, no. Absolutely not. Like, no. No. Like, no. Like, absolutely never, ever, ever, ever in life. I mean, I just would never do that. I mean, you should never do that. There's no way you should ever do that. Have I said that enough?
For him to finish, and then you have next.
Yeah, leave that alone. That's gross. That's weird. Forgive me if there's anyone like it. And here's the reason I'll say it. You are at completely different stages of life. I mean, one is getting ready to go into the mode where you need to probably be taken care of. And the other one is getting ready to travel the world. I'd even be careful at 25 and 40. I'd be real careful of that. Those are huge age gaps. They're two different sexual peaks that you're experiencing. One is probably a little more settled in their ways. The other one is still figuring out what their ways are. Kids are probably not really going to be an option. Now, are there some couples that have that huge gap? Yeah, I mean, my step-grandparents were at that kind of gap, and it worked out a little bit. I think it was like a 12, 13-year gap or something like that. It worked for them, but again, that's a completely different time. It was a completely different time where a woman didn't have to get an education or anything like that. Because a lot of times, here's what ends up happening. Usually, it's an older man with a younger woman. And I'm going to tell you what happens to you ladies. I'm going to tell you what happens all the time. Not as much now in 2014, but some ladies, y'all still getting caught up in this trap. Dude is 33, right? You're 20. You're like, oh man, I want me a mature guy. You know, he's not playing games. He's settled in his life, all that kind of stuff. And he's like, I got me a young woman who can have me some kids, stay home, take care of my family, right? So that's what happens. They stay home, have kids. They eventually get a divorce. Guess what she hasn't done? Gotten her education, gotten her degree, started her career, and so now she's 30 and has been out of the work field for over 10 years. Divorce, done. Because she got with the older dude who said, baby, don't worry about it, I'm gonna take care of you. So, let me tell you, that happens all the time. And that's why the court cases get so nasty. It's not always because the chick is trying to be trifling. It's because she's like, no, if I don't get alimony from you, I can't make it. Because I haven't been working for 10 years because I've been your young princess taking care of your kids. So that's what I'm saying, that whole thing, you gotta think about those things. So that age gap is, you gotta think about what that really means. And here's the thing, the age gap is cool now. But you gotta think about it, if it's 12 years now, when you 40 and you still young and keeping your thing together, and they're like 52, and they start really slowing down, it annoys you in some sense. Because you're like, come on, can we travel? You're like, no, let's just sleep. It's like, let's get old together. See, that's my thing. Let's grow old together. I don't want to watch you get old. That's my thing. All right? The last one here? Yeah.
I was going to ask about music and music videos and things that are like in the media and that's impacting ideas about sexuality and things. Some of it is really catchy and can be quite enjoyable to listen to, but then you look at the music video and it's suddenly like, oh my gosh, yeah. So what I'm saying is that it's a large part of our lives, this sort of cultural images. How do you deal with that sort of thing?
Yeah, let me tell you one thing the Bible makes very clear, and this is tough. It's tough. Whatsoever is good, whatsoever is pure, whatsoever is holy, whatsoever is just, think on these things. Think on these things. Because you are affected by what you see. I've had to explain to my 8-year-old daughter what homosexuality is because of what mainstream media has made that so prevalent, acceptable, alternative lifestyle, all that kind of stuff in our society. So much so to the point that, some of us, it doesn't even affect us. I mean, TV shows, all kind of stuff, it's the thing. It's the normal thing. The way some of us allow ourselves to be touched and prodded and all that kind of stuff is because of different things that we see on TV. The fact that most of us don't wait till we get married to have sex is completely based on a lot of what our culture and especially the media has told us, movies, all that different kinds of stuff. So we have to be very careful with what we allow in because it absolutely has a tremendous effect on the way that we, that we live our lives and do that thing. So you're absolutely right. It does have an effect. Music, media, all that kind of stuff. So you got to be very selective in the kind of things that you let in. I've seen somebody's hand in there at the back. I know we're supposed to take 2 more. Let me take my man. He's had his hand up for a little bit. Wow. Last one. Absolutely. The most dynamic thing? Yeah, for me, I think the most dynamic thing about us is I think we have a very special message that changes people's lives. I think we do. I don't think we truly understand the gold mine that we have sitting on as a group of young people. And that message is about a Savior who takes you as you are, but loves you too much to let you stay that way. So I think that's what it is. And the young people that we interact with, I'm telling you, they're looking to be accepted. That's why they do all the stuff that they do. They're looking to be accepted. And our message is a message that says, hey, look, there's a God that takes you, but he loves you so much that he makes you different than what you are. And I think that's just a great message. I think it's a great message. It's a message about this amazing God who loves us and one day is coming back for us. And he wants to make our lives look more like his. That's what's dynamic about us. What's dynamic about us is not simply our diet. God transcends even that. All those different little things that we have that point to him do not replace him. And so I think we've got that amazing message. And if we really grabbed it ourselves, I think other people would just be crazy for it. I think they'd be crazy for it. So I think our message is great, and it's the message of Christ and in his righteousness. Christ and his righteousness. So.
All right, shall we put our hands together for Pastor? Please, round of applause. Now, Pastor wasn't prepared for this. He wasn't told that we were going to have something like this.